When the ambulance left without its sirens that night, Caleb Reed knew someone wasn't coming back. He just didn't know the widow next door would soon be knocking. Not for sugar or silence, but because grief had cornered her in an empty apartment and she couldn't breathe alone anymore. What started as one fragile night became something neither could name. Something the neighborhood wouldn't understand. Something that broke every rule about timing, about healing, about what happens when two broken people stop pretending they're fine. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city name so I can see how far this tale travels. The sirens came at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Caleb Reed noticed them, the way anyone notices emergency vehicles in a city, with half attention, a brief glance toward the window, then back to the fraction problem his daughter was struggling with. The flashing red and blue lights painted streaks across his kitchen wall, turning the cream paint into something urgent and strange. "Dad? I still don't get it," Maya said, her pencil hovering over the workbook. She was 8, small for her age, with dark curls that never stayed in their ponytail and eyes that asked questions faster than he could answer them. "You're dividing the top and bottom by the same number," Caleb explained, leaning over her shoulder. His voice was patient, measured, the voice of a man who'd learned to stay calm when everything inside wanted to break. "See? If you simplify..." The sirens cut off mid-wail. That was the first strange thing. Emergency vehicles didn't just stop. They arrived somewhere, delivered their chaos, then departed with the same noise they'd brought. But these sirens simply ended, like someone had flipped a switch. Caleb straightened, glancing toward the wall that separated his apartment from 4B, Lena Carter's place. He'd lived next to her for 3 years, ever since he and Maya had moved in after the divorce. Lena and her husband Marcus were the kind of neighbors everyone wanted, quiet, considerate, the sort who slipped thank you notes under your door when you signed for their packages. Marcus worked nights sometimes. Caleb had seen him leaving in his mechanic's uniform, lunchbox in hand, keys jangling. The apartment next door had gone dark, not gradually, the way lights fade when someone goes to bed, all at once, like power cutting out, except Caleb's lights were fine. "Dad?" Maya was watching him now, fraction forgotten. "It's nothing, sweetheart. Finish problem 6. But his attention stayed on that wall, on the sudden absence of sound from 4B. The Carter's apartment was never silent. There was always something: television murmur, running water, the soft thump of footsteps. Marcus had a habit of playing old Motown records on weekend mornings. Lena hummed while she cooked. Now, nothing. Caleb forced himself back to the homework, but his mind wouldn't settle. The sirens, the darkness, the silence pressing against the wall like something living. They finished the math worksheet 20 minutes later. Maya brushed her teeth, picked out her clothes for tomorrow. She insisted on doing this herself now, part of her growing independence, and climbed into bed with her current favorite book, a fantasy novel about dragons that she'd read 3 times already. 5 more minutes, Caleb said, kissing her forehead. Then lights out. 10? 7. Deal. He pulled her door halfway closed, the way she liked it, and walked back to the kitchen. The dishes from dinner sat in the sink, spaghetti plates, 2 glasses, 1 small pot. He ran the water hot, adding soap, trying to ignore the continued silence from next door. Something had happened. He knew it the way you know a storm is coming before the first drops fall. But it wasn't his business. Caleb had learned to mind his own business, to keep his world small and manageable. Work as an accountant at a small firm downtown. Maya's school, her activities, her needs. The careful routine they'd built after Jennifer left. That was enough. That had to be enough. He washed the dishes slowly, methodically, rinsed them, set them in the drying rack. 9:47 p.m. The sirens. It was 10:23 now. Caleb dried his hands and walked to Maya's room. She'd fallen asleep with the book open on her chest, the lamp still glowing. He marked her page, set the book on her nightstand, and turned off the light. In sleep, she looked impossibly young, impossibly vulnerable. The weight of being her only reliable parent settled on him like it did every night. Heavy, precious, terrifying. He pulled her door until it was almost closed and walked to his own bedroom, changed into sweatpants and a t-shirt, brushed his teeth, set his alarm for 6:15 a.m. But he didn't sleep. He lay in the darkness, listening. The building's normal sounds filtered through. Someone's television on the floor above, footsteps in the hallway, the groan of old pipes. But from 4B, still nothing. At 11:30, he heard the building's main door open and close, heavy footsteps in the stairwell, multiple voices, low and official. Then the sound of a door opening. Lena's door, he realized. The murmur of conversation too quiet to make out words. Caleb sat up in bed. More footsteps, coming and going. The hallway creaked outside his door. He considered getting up, looking through the peephole, but something stopped him. This was private. Someone's crisis, not his. At 12:15 a.m., the footsteps finally retreated down the stairs. The building's door opened and closed one last time. Then silence again. Complete and absolute. Caleb lay back down, but sleep was impossible now. He kept seeing Marcus Carter's face. Friendly, open, the kind of man who always asked how you were doing and actually listened to the answer. They'd talked sometimes in the parking lot, brief conversations about weather or sports or nothing at all. Marcus had helped him carry a new bookshelf upstairs once, refusing payment, saying neighbors helped neighbors. At 6:15, Caleb's alarm went off. He'd maybe slept 2 hours in fractured pieces. Maya was already awake, getting dressed in the outfit she'd chosen. He made breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice. They ate together at the small kitchen table while Maya chattered about a project at school, something involving the solar system and poster board. Caleb nodded and responded in the right places, but his attention kept drifting to the wall. Still silent. He dropped Maya at school at 7:45, came back to shower and dress for work. As he was leaving, he paused outside 4B's door, stood there for a full minute, hand raised to knock. But what would he say? I heard sirens last night. Is everything okay? Too intrusive. Do you need anything? Presumptuous. Maybe nothing had happened at all. He lowered his hand and left for work. The day crawled. He sat at his desk, reviewing spreadsheets and tax documents, but the numbers kept blurring. During lunch, he almost called the apartment building's management, then felt foolish. He was being paranoid. Sirens were common in the city. People turned their lights off. Silence was normal, but that silence wasn't normal. He picked Maya up from school at 3:30, stopped at the grocery store for milk and bread, drove home. As they climbed the stairs to the 4th floor, Maya ran ahead, her backpack bouncing. She stopped at their door. Dad? Something in her voice made him hurry the last few steps. There was a person sitting in the hallway, curled against the wall between their door and 4B's, knees drawn up, head down, dark hair falling forward, shoulders shaking. Lena Carter. Mrs. Carter? Caleb's voice came out softer than he'd intended. She didn't look up. Her whole body was trembling, not from cold, but from something internal, something breaking apart. Maya pressed against Caleb's side, uncertain. He touched her shoulder gently. Go inside, sweetheart. Start your homework. I'll be there in a minute. But, please, Maya. She looked between him and Lena, then nodded slowly. He unlocked their door and she slipped inside, glancing back once before it closed. Caleb knelt down carefully, leaving space. Lena? She finally raised her head. Her face was wrecked, eyes swollen, skin blotchy, tear tracks dried and fresh both present. She looked like she hadn't slept, like she'd been crying for hours, for days. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I didn't know where else. I couldn't. Her words dissolved into something that wasn't quite crying, wasn't quite breathing. Caleb sat down beside her, his back against the wall. Not touching, not crowding, just present. Marcus, she managed. Last night, the doctor said. She couldn't finish, didn't need to. The sirens, the darkness, the silence. I'm so sorry, Caleb said quietly. Lena's hands were shaking. She pressed them against her face, shoulders heaving with the effort of holding something too large inside a space too small. I sent him out, she said, the words raw. We needed milk, such a stupid thing, milk. And I asked him to go even though he'd just gotten home from work, even though he was tired. I asked him, Lena, and he went, because he always went, because that's who Marcus was. Her voice cracked. He was crossing the street and a car ran the light and she stopped, covered her mouth, shook her head like she could refuse the reality if she just denied it hard enough. Caleb had been through his own devastation when his marriage ended, when Jennifer walked out, when he realized he was going to raise Maya alone. But this was different. This was sudden. This was irrevocable. "I can't go in there," Lena whispered, looking at her door. "I tried this morning after everything, but I opened the door and his jacket was still on the hook and his coffee cup was in the sink and I can't." She started crying again, the kind of crying that comes from the center of you, that bends you in half with its force. Caleb didn't say anything, didn't offer empty comfort or try to fix it. He just sat there, this almost stranger in sweatpants and a work shirt, sitting in a hallway while his dinner got warm in a grocery bag and his daughter waited inside. After a long time, Lena's breathing steadied slightly. She wiped her face with her sleeve, though it didn't help much. "I'm sorry," she said again. "I shouldn't have. You have Maya to take care of. You're not being anything wrong," Caleb said. "You're grieving." The words seemed to hit her physically. She flinched. "I don't know how," she said. "I don't know how to do this. We were married for 12 years, and now he's just gone. How do people—" She looked at him with something like desperation, like he might have an answer. "I don't know," Caleb admitted. "I think you just keep breathing until breathing gets easier." It was inadequate. Everything was inadequate for this. Lena closed her eyes. "I can't be alone in there. I know that sounds weak, but I can't—" "It's not weak. I have nowhere else to go. My family's all in Oregon. Marcus's parents they're in Florida. They're flying in tomorrow, but tonight I'm just—" She trailed off, staring at her door like it was the entrance to something unbearable. Caleb stood up slowly, extended his hand. "Come inside, but," he said. Lena looked up at him, confused. "What?" "Our apartment. Come inside. You don't have to be alone." "I can't impose, Guy." "You're not imposing. I'm offering." She stared at his hand for a long moment. Then, slowly she took it and let him help her to her feet. They stood in the hallway, this widow and this single father, holding hands like children afraid of getting lost. Then Caleb opened his door and led her inside. Maya was at the kitchen table, her homework spread out, but she wasn't working. She was watching the door, waiting. "Maya, this is Mrs. Carter from next door," Caleb said gently. "She's going to stay with us for a little while." Maya nodded solemnly. At 8, she understood death in the abstract. Her grandmother had died 2 years ago. She knew it meant gone, meant sad, meant you cried at funerals and people brought casseroles. "Hi, Mrs. Carter," she said softly. Lena tried to smile. Failed. "Hi, Maya." Caleb guided Lena to the couch. "Sit. I'll make tea." He moved to the kitchen, putting the kettle on, while Maya gathered her homework and relocated to her room without being asked. The kid had instincts about when to give space. Lena sat on the couch like she might break if she moved wrong. Her hands were clasped in her lap, knuckles white. Caleb made chamomile tea. Jennifer had always said it helped with stress, and he'd kept the habit. He brought 2 mugs over, set one in front of Lena, and sat in the armchair across from her. "You don't have to talk," he said. "If you want to just sit, that's fine." Lena wrapped her hands around the mug but didn't drink. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you asked not to be alone. We barely know each other. Does that matter?" She looked at him then, really looked. "I suppose it doesn't." They sat in silence. Outside, the city hummed with traffic and life continuing, indifferent to individual tragedies. The tea steamed between them. "He was bringing home milk," Lena said eventually. "That's what kills me. This stupid, mundane thing. We were out of milk. I was going to make pancakes in the morning. He loved pancakes on his days off. And I asked him to run to the corner store even though it was late, even though he'd worked a double shift. It's not your fault." "How is it not?" Her voice rose slightly. "I sent him out. If I hadn't asked, if I'd just waited until morning, if I'd gone myself, then maybe it would have been you," Caleb said quietly, "and he'd be sitting somewhere, drowning in the same guilt." Lena's face crumpled. "That would have been better. He was good. Really good. Better than me. He should have. Don't, Caleb said, and his voice was firm enough to stop her. Don't go down that road. There's no better or worse in this. There's just loss. He'd learned that from his own damage. From the nights after Jennifer left, when he'd cataloged every failure, every way he'd driven her away, until Maya needed breakfast and he had to stop drowning in might-have-beens. Lena drank her tea, set the mug down with shaking hands. The hospital called me at 10:15, she said. Said there'd been an accident, that I needed to come. I knew when they said it like that. I knew. But I still hoped. All the way there in the taxi, I kept hoping. She stared at her hands. They let me see him, after. He just looked asleep, like he might wake up if I shook his shoulder hard enough. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I tried. I actually tried. The nurse she had to pull me away. Caleb felt his throat tighten. He'd seen Maya asleep and had that same irrational thought when she was sick once, that if he just watched long enough, everything would be fine. I signed papers, Lena continued, so many papers. They gave me a bag with his things, his wallet, his phone, his wedding ring. They'd taken it off at some point, and I don't know why. And then I went home and I sat in our apartment and I couldn't. The silence was. She stopped, pressed her palms against her eyes. I didn't sleep, she said. I sat on our couch all night, waiting for him to come home, knowing he wouldn't, waiting anyway. The sky outside had dimmed to purple twilight. Caleb realized he should probably start dinner, but moving felt wrong somehow. This morning, his mother called, Lena said, screaming, blaming me, saying I should have stopped him, should have gone instead, should have. She shook her head. She apologized later, called back crying, said she didn't mean it, but she did mean it, and she was right. No, you don't know that. I know that accidents happen, that timing is random, that guilt doesn't help anyone, especially you. Lena looked at him with hollow eyes. Then what does help? Caleb had no answer for that. He'd asked himself the same question through the divorce, through the custody battle, through the nights when Maya cried for her mother and he had nothing to offer but his own inadequate presence. Time, I guess, he said finally, and not being alone when it gets bad. Is that what worked for you? He was startled that she knew anything about his situation, but of course they were neighbors. She'd seen him coming and going with Maya, always just the two of them. She'd probably heard things through the walls. I'm still figuring it out, Caleb admitted. It's been 2 years since my divorce and I still don't have all the answers. But you survived. Yeah, I survived. Lena nodded slowly, like this was important information, like survival was a skill she needed to learn. From Maya's room came the sound of humming. She did this while drawing, making up wordless melodies. You have a beautiful daughter, Lena said. Thank you. Marcus and I wanted kids. We were going to start trying next year. He wanted to wait until we'd saved enough, until we had a house instead of an apartment. Her voice fractured. We had so many plans for next year. She started crying again, quietly this time. No theatrics, just steady tears running down her face while she sat very still. Caleb moved to the couch, sitting at the other end, giving her space but closing the distance. My sister died when we were kids, he said. Car accident. I was 12. She was 10. For months afterward, my parents walked around like ghosts, like someone had scooped out their insides. I remember thinking adults were supposed to know how to handle things, but they didn't. They were just as lost as I was. He'd never told anyone this story, not even Jennifer. What helped? Lena asked. Eventually, talking about her, not avoiding her name or her pictures. My mom started cooking her favorite meals, even though she wasn't there to eat them. Said it felt like keeping her close. He paused. I don't know if that was healthy, psychologically, but it got them through. Lena was quiet for a long time. Outside, streetlights flickered on. I should go, she said, but she didn't move. You should stay for dinner, Caleb countered. Nothing fancy, just pasta. I can't. You can. Maya already assumes you're staying. She'll be disappointed if you leave now. It was a gentle manipulation, using his daughter, but he could see Lena wavering. I don't want to burden you, she said. You're not. You don't even know me. So tell me about yourself while I cook. He stood and moved to the kitchen before she could protest further, filled a pot with water, set it on the stove, pulled out pasta, sauce, garlic. Lena stayed on the couch, but she was watching him now. What do you want to know? She asked. Anything. Everything. Whatever you want to share. She was quiet while he chopped garlic, the knife rhythmic against the cutting board. I'm a librarian, she said finally. At the public library downtown. Children's section. Maya loves that library. Does she? For the first time, something like a smile tried to form on Lena's face. I've worked there for 8 years. I love it. The kids, the books, the quiet. How did you and Marcus meet? Her face softened at his name. College. He was studying engineering but hated it. Switched to automotive technology his junior year and finally seemed happy. I was getting my library science degree. We met at a party neither of us wanted to be at. She paused, remembering. He spilled beer on my shoes. Spent the next hour apologizing and trying to clean them with napkins. I knew right then he was the kind of person who cared about making things right. The water started boiling. Caleb added pasta, stirred. We got married young, Lena continued. 23. Everyone said we were rushing, but 12 years later, we were still... She stopped. We were still. Past tense, the reality of it. Caleb heated sauce in a separate pan, adding the garlic, some basil from the plant Maya had grown last summer. He sounds like he was a good man, Caleb said. He was. He really was. Lena's voice was thick. He never forgot anniversaries or birthdays. He learned to cook my favorite meals even though he hated cooking. He worked so hard, too hard sometimes. I'd tell him to slow down, to rest, but he wanted to give us a good life. A house, kids, security. She wiped her eyes. And now none of it matters. All those plans, all that work, just gone. Erased in a second because someone ran a red light. The anger was surfacing now, cutting through the grief. I hope they throw the book at whoever did it, she said bitterly. I hope they suffer. Is that terrible? That I want them to hurt like I'm hurting? It's human, Caleb said. Maya emerged from her room. Is dinner ready? Almost, sweetheart. Can you set the table? She got out plates and forks, napkins, glasses, moved around Lena carefully, like she was something fragile that might break. They ate at the small kitchen table. Caleb had to pull in a chair from the living room for 3 people. Maya talked about her day, about her friend Sophia and some drama involving trading lunches. Lena listened, asked questions in the right places, managed to eat a few bites. After dinner, Maya went to brush her teeth. Lena helped Caleb with dishes without asking, falling into the rhythm of it. She washed, he dried. Thank you, she said quietly, as they worked. For this, for letting me stay. You can come back tomorrow if you need to, Caleb said, or the day after, whenever. Lena's hands paused in the soapy water. You don't have to do that. I know, but the offer stands. She looked at him with something like wonder. Why? Why would you do this for someone you barely know? Caleb dried the last plate, set it in the cabinet. Because nobody should have to face the worst night of their life alone, he said. And because I remember what it felt like when my world fell apart and people kept their distance. Like tragedy was contagious. Isn't it? No, it's just lonely. Lena nodded slowly, pulled the plug and watched the water drain. Maya came back in pajamas, carrying her current book. Will you read with me, Dad? Sure, sweetheart. He turned to Lena. Will you be okay for a bit? I'll be fine. He followed Maya to her room, settled into the reading chair while she climbed into bed. They were on chapter 12, something about a dragon learning to fly. He read aloud while Maya listened with closed eyes, already drifting. When he came back to the living room 20 minutes later, Lena was standing by the window looking out at the city lights. I should probably go, she said, but she sounded uncertain. You could stay, Caleb said. The couch pulls out. Maya sleeps like the dead. She won't wake up. I couldn't. Lena. He waited until she looked at him. Do you want to go back to your apartment tonight? She closed her eyes, shook her head. Then stay. He set up the pull-out couch with sheets and a blanket from the closet, brought her a pillow, found a spare toothbrush still in its package. Bathroom's through there, he said, pointing. Help yourself to anything you need. Lena stood in the middle of his living room, clutching the pillow like a life preserver. I don't understand why you're being so kind, she whispered. Caleb thought about it. About the night Jennifer left and he'd sat in the same apartment holding Maya while she cried, feeling like his life had just been divided into before and after. About the neighbors who'd avoided eye contact in the hallway, the friends who'd slowly stopped calling, the isolation that had felt like drowning. Because someone should be, he said simply. That night, lying in his own bed, Caleb listened to the quiet sounds of someone else in his apartment. Water running, the creak of the pull-out mattress, eventually, soft crying that lasted a long time before fading into silence. He stared at the ceiling and wondered what he'd just started. This wasn't his problem. Lena had family coming tomorrow. She'd be fine. But he remembered her face in the hallway, the way she'd looked at her own door like it was a tomb, and he knew she'd be back. The next morning, Lena was gone before they woke up. She'd folded the blanket neatly, returned the pillow to the couch, left a note on the kitchen counter in careful handwriting. Thank you for giving me somewhere to exist last night. I won't forget it. Lena Maya found the note while eating cereal. Is Mrs. Carter okay? She will be, Caleb said, hoping it was true. The day passed normally. Work, picking up Maya, dinner, homework, bedtime routine. Caleb kept listening for sounds from 4B but heard nothing. At 8:45 p.m., there was a knock at his door. He knew before he looked through the peephole. Lena stood in the hallway, wearing the same clothes from yesterday. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying, just standing there, waiting. Caleb opened the door. I tried, she said. I really tried to stay in there. His parents came and they helped me pack up some of his things, and they were very kind, but then they left to go to their hotel, and I was alone again, and... Come in, Caleb said. She did. And that was how it started. How grief carved out a space in Caleb Reed's careful, controlled life and moved in. How two people who barely knew each other became necessary to each other's survival. How everything began to change, one knock at a time. The pattern emerged without discussion or planning. 3 nights became 5. 5 became a week. Lena would appear at Caleb's door sometime after dinner, sometimes earlier. She never called ahead or texted. Just knocked, waited, and Caleb would open the door knowing exactly who stood on the other side. Maya stopped asking why Mrs. Carter kept coming back. Children accepted oddness faster than adults, built it into their understanding of how the world worked. Mrs. Carter was sad because her husband died, so she came to their apartment, simple, logical, in the way 8-year-old logic functioned. Should I set 3 places? Maya asked on the 5th night, already reaching for an extra plate. Yes, sweetheart. It became their new normal with startling speed. Lena would sit at the kitchen table while Caleb cooked. He'd never been particularly skilled, but divorce had forced competence. They'd eat together, the 3 of them, Maya filling silences with stories about school, while Lena listened with the attention of someone grateful for distraction. After dinner, Lena helped with dishes. Always. Caleb had tried to tell her she didn't need to, that she was a guest, but she'd looked at him with something almost like desperation and said, Please, I need to do something with my hands. So they developed a rhythm. She washed, he dried. Maya did homework at the table or disappeared into her room to read. The kitchen became a space of quiet companionship, the running water and clink of plates, a language that required no words. Sometimes Lena talked, sometimes she didn't. On the 6th night, while scrubbing a pot, she said, The funeral's Friday. Caleb had been expecting this. Do you need anything? I don't know what I need. Her hand stilled in the soapy water. His parents arranged everything. They keep asking my opinion, but then they do what they want anyway. Traditional service. Open casket. I told them Marcus wouldn't want people staring at him like that, but his mother started crying, and I couldn't... I just let them have it. It's their grief too, Caleb said carefully. I know, I'm not angry about it. I'm just numb, like I'm watching all of this happen to someone else. She pulled the plug, watched the water spiral away. Is that normal? I think grief doesn't have normal. What does it have? Waves. Some days you're drowning, Some days you can breathe. Then something small triggers it and you're drowning again. Lena dried her hands on a towel, slowly, deliberately. How long until the waves get smaller? Caleb wanted to lie, to offer comfort, but she deserved honesty. I don't know if they do, he said. I think you just get better at swimming. She looked at him then, really looked, and something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. The understanding that they were both people who'd learned to swim in deep water. Will you come? She asked. To the funeral? Of course. You don't have to. I want to. Maya appeared in the doorway, already in pajamas. Dad, I can't find my library book. Did you check your backpack? That's the first place I looked. Her tone suggested this was obvious. Bathroom. She disappeared and they heard rummaging sounds, then a triumphant, found it. Lena smiled, the first real smile Caleb had seen from her. Small, fragile, but genuine. She's wonderful. She's everything, Caleb said simply. Marcus wanted a daughter. Lena's smile faded. He had names picked out. Emma or Sophie. He'd practice saying them sometimes, trying them out. Her voice caught. Now those names will just stay in my head, belonging to people who'll never exist. Caleb had no response to that. The weight of unlived futures, of possibilities erased. There were no words adequate for that kind of loss. Maya called from her room. Dad, can you check my homework? Go, Lena said. Lena, I'll finish up here. When he came back 15 minutes later, Lena was sitting on the couch, hands folded in her lap, staring at nothing. Are you staying tonight? He asked. She nodded. Didn't elaborate. Didn't need to. Caleb set up the pull-out bed, brought the spare pillow, the blanket that was becoming hers. She thanked him quietly and went to the bathroom to change into the sleep clothes she'd started keeping in a small bag. This was the routine now, unspoken but understood. At night, Caleb would lie in his bed and listen to her cry through the wall. Soft, muffled sounds she tried to keep quiet. He never acknowledged it in the morning, never asked if she was okay. He knew the answer and knew that asking would only make her feel obligated to lie. The funeral was on a Friday. Caleb took the day off work, dropped Maya at school with an explanation that he'd be at something important, picked her up from her best friend Sophia's house afterward. The service was at a traditional chapel downtown. Caleb arrived early, sitting in the back. He watched people file in, Marcus's family, Lena's family who'd flown in from Oregon, co-workers, friends. The crowd was substantial. Marcus Carter had been loved. Lena sat in the front row between Marcus's parents. She wore black, her hair pulled back severe and tight. From behind, she looked carved from stone, unmoving, unreachable. The service followed predictable patterns. Hymns Caleb half remembered from childhood. A pastor who spoke about eternal rest and comfort and plans beyond human understanding. Marcus's brother gave a eulogy that painted him as a good man, a hard worker, someone taken too soon. Then Lena stood. Caleb hadn't expected this. She walked to the podium on legs that seemed barely stable, gripped the edges with white knuckles. I'm not good at public speaking, she started, her voice amplified and fragile. Marcus was always better with words. He could talk to anyone about anything. I was the quiet one. She paused, gathering herself. 12 years ago, Marcus spilled beer on my shoes at a party. He spent an hour trying to clean them, apologizing the entire time. I thought he was ridiculous. Who apologizes that much over shoes? A ghost of a smile. But that was Marcus. He cared about making things right, about being good. Her composure cracked slightly. We had plans, so many plans. A house, children, growing old together. All those normal, beautiful, boring plans that people make when they think they have time. She stopped, struggling. We were supposed to have time. The chapel was utterly silent. I keep thinking about the last thing I said to him. It was, don't forget the milk, not I love you, or be careful, or anything meaningful. Just don't forget the milk. And those are the last words my husband heard from me before. She couldn't finish, stood there shaking, tears running down her face, unable to continue and unable to leave the podium. Marcus's mother stood and walked to her, guided her back to the seat with gentle hands. Lena collapsed into the embrace, sobbing in a way that seemed to come from somewhere primal and broken. Caleb felt his own throat tighten. Around him, people were crying. The pastor stepped back to the podium, continued with practiced grace through what Lena couldn't finish. At the cemetery, Caleb stood at a distance while family gathered around the casket. The day was overcast, threatening rain, appropriate weather for burying someone 34 years old. After the final words were spoken and people began dispersing, Lena stood alone by the grave. Her family hovered nearby, uncertain. Marcus's parents had already left, his mother too devastated to stay. Caleb waited. Eventually, Lena's sister approached her, said something. Lena shook her head. Her sister tried again, then finally walked away, glancing back with worried eyes. Caleb walked over slowly, stopped a few feet away. I can't leave him here, Lena said without looking at him. I know that's irrational. I know he's already gone, but walking away feels like abandoning him. Then don't. Not yet. Everyone else has. I'm here. She finally turned to him. Her face was wrecked, makeup destroyed by tears, eyes hollow. Why? She asked. Why do you keep showing up for this? For me? Because you asked me not to leave you alone. That was one night. And then it was another night, and another. Caleb looked at the fresh grave, the flowers already wilting. You needed someone. I could be someone. But why you? He considered this. Maybe because I know what it's like when the world expects you to be fine before you're ready, when people get tired of your grief and want you to move on. Lena wiped her face with the back of her hand. Did you? Move on? From my divorce? Eventually. But it took longer than people had patience for. He paused. Grief doesn't follow a schedule. How long did it take you? I'll let you know when I'm finished. This surprised a sound from her that might have been a laugh or might have been another sob. They stood in silence, watching the cemetery workers begin filling in the grave. The sound of dirt hitting the casket was unbearable. Can we go? Lena asked quietly. Yes. She let him guide her back to his car, sat in the passenger seat staring straight ahead while he drove. He didn't take her to her apartment or ask where she wanted to go, just drove to his building, parked, led her upstairs. Inside his apartment, Lena stood in the middle of the living room like she'd forgotten how to move. Caleb hung up his jacket, loosened his tie. Have you eaten today? He asked. She shook her head. I'll make something. I'm not hungry. I'm making it anyway. He went to the kitchen, started pulling out ingredients, made grilled cheese sandwiches, comfort food, simple, something from childhood. Cut them diagonally the way his mother had, poured 2 glasses of water. Lena sat at the table because he'd set a plate in front of her, picked at the sandwich, managed a few bites. His mother blamed me, she said suddenly. When we were at the burial, she said if I'd just gone to the store myself, Marcus would still be alive. She apologized immediately, said grief was making her cruel, but she meant it. Grief makes everyone cruel sometimes. She's right, though. No, she's grieving and looking for someone to blame. That's different from being right. Lena set down her sandwich. How do you do that? Do what? Say things that make the world feel less impossible. I'm just talking. It's more than that. She looked at him across the table. You make me feel like I might survive this. You will survive this. How do you know? Because you survived yesterday, and you'll survive tomorrow, and eventually those days add up. She was quiet for a long moment. Can I stay tonight? You don't have to ask anymore. I feel like I should, like I'm taking advantage of your kindness. You're not. I am, though. I'm using you as a shield against my own apartment, against being alone with my thoughts. That's not fair to you. Caleb finished his sandwich, considered his words. When Jennifer left, Maya asked me every night when her mom was coming back. For months. Every single night. And I never had a good answer, just, I don't know, sweetheart, over and over, until she stopped asking. He paused, remembering. I felt like I was failing her, like I should have better answers, better comfort, but all I had was showing up, being there, making breakfast and helping with homework and reading bedtime stories even when I wanted to collapse. He met Lena's eyes. Sometimes showing up is enough. You're not taking advantage. You're surviving. There's no shame in that. Lena's eyes filled again. I'm so tired of crying. Then don't apologize for it. She nodded, wiping her face. Thank you for coming today, to the funeral. You didn't have to. I wanted to be there. Why? Because you shouldn't have to face that alone either. Later, after Caleb had picked up Maya and they'd eaten a quiet dinner, after homework and the bedtime routine, Lena sat on the pull-out bed fully dressed, hands in her lap. Maya had said goodnight with a careful hug. She'd been doing this lately, offering physical comfort with the seriousness of someone who understood its weight. Caleb sat in the armchair. Do you want to talk? I don't know what to say. My brain feels empty. That's okay. They sat in companionable silence. The apartment building settled around them with its familiar creaks and groans. Someone's television murmured through the ceiling. I went to the library today, Lena said eventually. Before the funeral. Just walked in my work clothes, not intending to do anything. My supervisor saw me and tried to send me home, but I asked if I could just sit in the children's section for a while. Did you? Yeah, there's this reading corner with beanbag chairs and picture books. Kids were there having story time. I just sat and listened to the librarian read about a caterpillar that eats too much. She smiled faintly. Marcus used to come by during my lunch break sometimes. We'd eat sandwiches in the staff room and he'd tell me about whatever car he was working on. He always smelled like motor oil and coffee. Her voice stayed steady, not quite crying yet. I keep forgetting he's gone. I'll think I should tell Marcus about this, or he'd find this funny. And then I remember. She pressed her hand against her chest. It's like learning the same terrible truth over and over. I did that with Jennifer at first, Caleb admitted. I'd come home and almost call out that I was back before remembering she didn't live here anymore. Muscle memory of a life that ended. Does it stop? The forgetting? Eventually. But the instinct to share things with them, that takes longer. Lena pulled her knees up, wrapped her arms around them. She looked impossibly young in that moment, vulnerable in a way that made Caleb's chest ache. I'm scared, she said quietly. Of what? That I'll forget him. His voice, his laugh, the way he looked at me. What if I can't remember? Write it down, everything you remember. His habits, his favorite things, the stories you shared. Get it out of your head and onto paper where it can't fade. Will that work? I don't know, but it's better than trusting memory alone. She nodded slowly, considering this. I have videos on my phone. From our anniversary last year. We went to this restaurant and Marcus tried to order in French even though he didn't speak a word of it. The waiter was so confused. Do you watch them? I can't yet. Every time I try, I panic and close them, but I can't delete them either. She looked at him. Is that normal? I think everything you're feeling is normal. Even the anger? Especially the anger. I'm so angry, she said, and the words came out fierce. At the driver who killed him, at myself for sending him out, at Marcus for going, at everyone who gets to keep living their normal life while mine is destroyed. Is that horrible? It's human. It feels horrible. Anger is part of grief. You don't have to be noble about it. Lena rested her chin on her knees. When does it get easier? I'm told it doesn't get easier. You just get stronger. I don't feel strong. You buried your husband today and you're still here. That's strength. She closed her eyes, tears slipping free. I don't want to go back to that apartment. Ever. I know I have to eventually, but the thought of it makes me want to crawl out of my skin. So don't. Not yet. I can't live on your couch forever. Why not? Because that's insane. We barely know each other. We're learning. She opened her eyes, looked at him with something like wonder. You're the strangest person I've ever met. Is that good or bad? I haven't decided yet. A small smile crossed her face, fleeting but real. The days that followed developed their own rhythm. Lena returned to work after a week, the library giving her flexible hours and infinite patience. She'd come to Caleb's apartment directly after, still in her work clothes, looking exhausted but functional. Maya started including Lena in her after-school routine without being asked. Mrs. Carter, want to see my art project? Mrs. Carter, I got an A on my spelling test. Mrs., Carter, can you help me with this math problem? Dad's terrible at fractions. Hey, Caleb protested mildly. I'm getting better. You're really not, Maya said with the brutal honesty of children. Lena laughed, actually laughed, and the sound was so unexpected that both Caleb and Maya stopped to stare. What? Lena said, still smiling. Nothing, Caleb said. It's just good to hear. Her smile faded slightly but didn't disappear entirely. It feels weird, like I'm not allowed to yet. You're allowed to feel everything, Caleb said, including moments of okay. That night after Maya went to bed, Lena said, I'm thinking about moving. Caleb, washing dishes, went still. Where? I don't know. Somewhere that doesn't have Marcus's ghost in every room. She was drying a plate, hands slow and careful. But that feels like running away. Or protecting yourself. Is there a difference? Sometimes, no. She set the plate aside, picked up another. His parents keep calling, asking when I'm going to sort through his things, what I want to keep, whether I'm keeping the apartment. They mean well, but it feels like pressure to move on before I'm ready. What do you want? I want it to be 6 months ago when everything was normal and boring and perfect. Her voice cracked. I want to complain about Marcus leaving wet towels on the floor and staying up too late watching car videos. I want ordinary problems. I know. I hate that you know. I hate that you understand because it means you went through something terrible too. Would you rather I didn't understand? She considered this. No, it helps. Knowing someone made it through their version of hell. You'll make it through yours. You keep saying that because it's true. She looked at him across the kitchen. What if I don't want to? Make it through, I mean. What if I'm too tired? The question hung heavy between them. Caleb set down the dish he was holding, gave her his full attention. Are you saying you want to hurt yourself? He asked carefully. No, not really. Just that sometimes I think it would be easier to stop trying so hard to be okay. You don't have to be okay. You just have to keep breathing. Breathing is exhausting. I know. They finished the dishes in silence. Afterward, Lena curled up on the couch with a book she wasn't reading. Caleb sat in the armchair with his laptop, pretending to work while actually watching her. Stop hovering, she said without looking up. I'm not hovering. You're absolutely hovering. I can feel you being concerned from here. Sorry. Don't apologize. She trailed off, finding words. It's nice. Having someone worry about me? Marcus's parents worry at me like I'm a problem to solve. You just sit with it. I learned from Maya. When she's upset, she doesn't want solutions, just presence. Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. Lena finally set down her book. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. Do you miss being married? Not to Jennifer specifically, but the partnership of it? Caleb thought about this carefully. Sometimes. I miss having someone to share the load with, someone who cares about Maya as much as I do. But I don't miss the fighting or the feeling of failing at something important. Do you think you'll marry again? I don't know, maybe. If I found someone who fit our life. He paused. Why do you ask? Marcus's mother said I'm young enough to start over. Find someone new eventually. Have the kids we never got to have. Lena's face was unreadable. The thought makes me sick. Then don't think about it. But what if she's right? What if years from now I meet someone and forget what this felt like? You won't forget. You'll just learn to carry it. How do you know? Because I still remember what it felt like when Jennifer left. Still remember sitting on this couch holding Maya while she cried. That doesn't go away. But it becomes part of your story instead of the whole story. Lena pulled a blanket around herself. I don't want a new story. I want my old one back. I know, but you don't get to choose which stories you live through, just how you live through them. She was quiet for a long time. Then, thank you for letting me stay here so much, for being patient with my mess. You're not a mess. I'm absolutely a mess. Okay, you're a mess. But you're managing it. This earned a small smile. Such a gentleman. I try. The weeks accumulated. Lena spent most nights on Caleb's couch. Her own apartment sat mostly empty. gathering dust in silence. Sometimes she'd go back for fresh clothes or to pay bills, but she never stayed long. Maya, perceptive as always, asked one morning over breakfast, "Is Mrs. Carter going to live with us now?" Caleb glanced at Lena, who'd frozen with her coffee cup halfway to her mouth. "She's staying for a while," Caleb said carefully. "Is that okay with you?" Maya considered this with the seriousness she applied to important decisions. "I like when she's here. The apartment feels less empty." "It was just the two of us before," Caleb pointed out. "I know, but 3 is better." Maya returned to her cereal like this settled the matter. After he dropped Maya at school, Caleb came back to find Lena washing their breakfast dishes, even though he'd told her to leave them. "Maya said 3 is better," she said without preamble. "What do you think?" "I think she's not wrong. This is becoming too much. I'm overstaying whatever welcome I had. Are you uncomfortable being here?" "No." "Then you're not overstaying." Lena turned off the water, faced him. "Caleb, we need to talk about what this is, what we're doing. We're being friends." "Are we? Because I'm not sure friends spend this much time together. I'm not sure friends become this necessary to each other this quickly." He'd been avoiding this conversation, but she was right to push it. "What do you want this to be?" "I don't know," she admitted. "I just know that I can't breathe in my apartment alone, but I can breathe here. That your voice talking about normal things is the only thing that makes the world feel survivable." She paused. "That scares me." "Why?" "Because I don't want to replace Marcus with you, and I don't want to use you as a grief crutch, and I definitely don't want to hurt Maya by becoming important to her and then disappearing when I finally get my life together." "Who says you're going to disappear?" "Isn't that how this works? I lean on you until I'm stable again, then move on. Is that what you want?" "I don't know what I want. That's the problem." Caleb sat at the kitchen table, gestured for her to sit too. She did, hands folded, waiting. "Here's what I know," he said. "You're grieving something enormous. That takes time and space and patience. I can offer all 3. Not because I want something from you, but because I can. Because watching you drown and doing nothing would make me complicit in that drowning. But I'm not finished." He kept his voice gentle. "Maya likes you. Hell, I like you. Your presence here doesn't burden us. It enriches. So stay as long as you need. And when you don't need it anymore, then we'll figure out what comes next." "What if there is no next? What if I'm always this broken?" "Then you're always welcome here anyway." Lena's eyes filled. "That's too much kindness." "There's no such thing." She reached across the table, took his hand. Her fingers were cold, trembling slightly. "Thank you for all of this, for being exactly what I needed when I didn't know how to ask for it." He squeezed her hand gently. "You don't have to thank me." "I do, though, because not everyone would do this." They sat there, hands linked across the kitchen table, while morning light filtered through the windows and the city hummed its indifferent music outside. 2 people learning to exist in the wreckage of their separate tragedies, building something unnamed but necessary between them. And neither knew yet how much more complicated things would become, how the world would demand explanations they didn't have, how rules would need to be established, and then, eventually, broken. They only knew this moment, this fragile piece they'd constructed together. For now, that was enough. The plate slipped from Lena's hands on a Wednesday evening, 6 weeks after Marcus died. She'd been helping with dinner, moving from counter to table, with the automatic precision of someone who'd performed this task 1,000 times. Caleb was draining pasta at the sink. Maya was setting out napkins, humming something tuneless. Everything was ordinary, routine, safe. Then the plate hit the floor and shattered. The sound was sharp, final. Ceramic fragments scattered across the linoleum in a pattern that looked almost deliberate, like someone had arranged them for maximum coverage. Everyone froze. "I'm sorry," Lena said immediately, her voice strange. "I'm so sorry. I don't know why I—" She bent down to pick up the pieces, and her hands started shaking. Not the small tremor she'd had for weeks, but violent shaking that made grabbing anything impossible. A shard of plate slipped through her fingers and clattered back to the floor. "Lena, it's okay," Caleb said, moving toward her. "It's just a plate." "I'm sorry," she said again, and now her whole body was shaking. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Maya, sweetheart, can you go to your room for a few minutes? Maya looked between them, uncertain, then nodded and disappeared down the hallway. Her door clicked shut softly. Caleb knelt beside Lena, careful not to touch her yet. Hey, look at me. But she couldn't stop staring at the broken plate, at her hands that wouldn't work properly, at the mess she'd made. I can't even hold a plate, she said, and her voice was breaking apart. I can't do anything right. I can't sleep in my own apartment. I can't go a day without falling apart. I can't even make it through dinner without destroying something. Lena. And it's my fault. The words came out harsh, desperate. All of it. Marcus is dead because of me. That's not true. It is. She was crying now, hard sobs that shook her shoulders. I sent him out that night. For milk. Stupid, pointless milk that we didn't even need that badly. He was tired from working a double shift, and I knew it, but I asked anyway because I'm selfish and lazy and… Stop. Caleb's voice was firm but not harsh. Just stop. I killed him, Lena said, and the words seemed to break something inside her. She collapsed onto the floor, uncaring of the broken ceramic, hands pressed against her face. I might as well have pushed him in front of that car myself. He'd be alive if it weren't for me. The grief that had been building for 6 weeks, held back by sheer force of will and the distraction of Caleb's apartment, came flooding out. She sobbed with the kind of abandonment that only happens when you've finally stopped fighting. Her whole body shook with it, bent double on the kitchen floor, while broken plate pieces scattered around her. Caleb didn't try to stop her or tell her she was wrong. He just moved the largest shards of ceramic away from where she was kneeling, then sat down beside her. Not touching, not crowding, just there. It wasn't your fault, he said quietly. The person driving the car killed Marcus, not you. I sent him out to buy milk. That's not a crime. That's not negligence. That's a normal request between married people. His voice stayed steady, anchoring. You didn't know what would happen. You couldn't have known. I should have gone myself. And if you had, and the same thing happened, Marcus would be sitting somewhere drowning in this exact same guilt, blaming himself for letting you go. Lena shook her head violently. That's different. Why? Because you're supposed to be psychic? Because you should have sensed danger that didn't exist until a stranger ran a red light? I keep thinking about those last words. Don't forget the milk. That's what I said. That's the last thing I'll ever say to my husband, and it was about milk. She was gasping between sobs now, barely able to breathe. How do I live with that? The same way everyone lives with their last words to the people they've lost. By understanding that you can't control timing, that ordinary moments don't come with warnings. Caleb paused, choosing his words carefully. My sister's last words to my parents were, I'll be home by 10. She was going to a friend's house. Normal, boring, meaningless. Then she got in a car accident and those were the last words. For years my mother obsessed over them, wishing she'd said I love you, or be careful, or anything else. What happened? Lena asked through tears. Eventually she realized that my sister knew she was loved, that a lifetime of I love yous doesn't get erased by one practical sentence. The last words don't matter more than all the other words. But they feel like they matter. I know, but feelings aren't facts. Lena's sobs were quieting slightly, still coming in waves but less violent. She uncovered her face, looked at him with eyes so devastated it hurt to meet them. I don't know how to forgive myself, she whispered. Then don't. Not yet. Just try to stop punishing yourself. How? By remembering that Marcus loved you, that he went to get milk because he wanted to do something nice for you, not because you forced him, that he made that choice freely, the same way he made every choice to be with you. Caleb's voice softened. Guilt is just love with nowhere to go. You're not a bad person for sending your husband to the store. You're a grieving person looking for someone to blame. I need someone to blame. I know, but it can't be you. She started crying again, but it was different this time. Quieter, less destructive. Like something had finally broken open instead of just breaking. Caleb shifted slightly, and Lena, without thinking, without permission, leaned into him, just collapsed against his shoulder like her bones had stopped working. He went still for a heartbeat, then carefully wrapped his arms around her. She cried into his shirt while he held her on the kitchen floor surrounded by broken ceramic, held her the way you'd hold something fragile and precious that might shatter if you let go. "I miss him so much," she said against his shoulder, voice muffled. "Every morning I wake up and for just a second I forget, and then I remember and it's like losing him all over again, and I'm so tired of losing him over and over." "I know. Do you? Did you feel like this when Jennifer left?" Caleb considered lying, making it easier, chose honesty instead. "Yes and no. I grieved the marriage, the life I thought we'd have, but she was still alive somewhere, making her own choices. This is different. You don't get any closure because there's no possibility of reconciliation or understanding. He's just gone." "Sometimes I hear his voice," Lena said, "in my head, telling me things he used to say, 'Don't worry so much,' or 'It'll work out.' But I can't remember exactly how he sounded anymore. His voice is already fading, and that terrifies me." "Do you have recordings?" "Some. On my phone. But I can't listen to them. I've tried, and I panic." "That's okay. They'll be there when you're ready." She pulled back slightly, wiping her face with her sleeve. Her eyes were swollen, face blotchy, and she looked absolutely wrecked. "I'm sorry for falling apart. Don't apologize. I got your shirt all wet. I have others." She laughed, a small, broken sound. "You're ridiculous." "I've been told." They sat there on the floor, Lena still leaning against him, both of them surrounded by the debris of a broken plate and a broken heart. The pasta sat cooling on the stove. Maya's door was still closed. "I should clean this up," Lena said, looking at the ceramic pieces. "Leave it. I'll get it later." "But, Lena, leave it." His voice was gentle but firm. "The plate can wait." "You can't." She nodded slowly. "I don't think I can stand up yet." "Then we'll sit." So they did. Minutes passed. The light from the window shifted, golden hour turning to dusk. Caleb could feel Lena's breathing gradually steadying against him, the trembling in her body slowly subsiding. "Thank you," she said eventually, "for not trying to fix this, for just letting me break." "You're not broken." "I feel broken." "You're grieving. There's a difference." She was quiet for a moment. "Is there?" "Broken things can't be repaired. Grieving people can heal. They're not the same." "You sound very certain." "I'm not, but I'm hopeful." She pulled back enough to look at him properly. Her face was still a mess, but her eyes held something new. Not happiness, not peace, but maybe the smallest seed of possibility. "When did you become the person who holds people together?" she asked. "When my world fell apart and no one held me together. I learned what I needed so I could give it to someone else." "That's sad." "Maybe, but it's also useful." Lena reached out and touched his face, a fleeting gesture that seemed to surprise her as much as him. Her fingers were cold and gentle and gone almost immediately. "You're a good man, Caleb Reed," she said softly. "I'm trying to be." "You're succeeding." They both stood then, carefully avoiding the broken plate. Caleb found the broom and dustpan, swept up the pieces while Lena washed her face in the bathroom. When she came back out, Maya was peeking around her bedroom door. "Is everything okay?" Maya asked, her voice small. "Everything's okay, sweetheart," Caleb said. "Mrs. Carter had a rough moment, but she's better now." Maya walked over to Lena, looked up at her seriously. "Are you sad about your husband?" "Yes," Lena said, because lying to children never worked. "Very sad. My friend Sophia's grandpa died last year. She said being sad is normal." "It is normal." "Do you want a hug?" "Hugs help when I'm sad." Lena's face crumpled slightly, but she nodded. Maya wrapped her small arms around Lena's waist and squeezed with the fierce intensity of childhood affection. Lena hugged back, closing her eyes against fresh tears. "Thank you, Maya," she whispered. "You're welcome. Dad gives really good hugs too when I'm super sad. He's the best at it." Caleb felt something warm and painful expand in his chest. "Come on, kiddo, let's reheat dinner." They ate later than usual, the pasta slightly overcooked from sitting, but no one complained. Maya talked about a book she was reading, something about wizards, and Lena asked questions in the right places. The breakdown was acknowledged in glances but not discussed. After Maya went to bed, after dishes were washed and put away, Lena sat on the pull-out bed, fully dressed, hands folded in her lap. "Can I tell you something?" she asked. Caleb sat in the armchair. "Always. I've been having thoughts about not wanting to be here anymore. Nothing concrete, nothing I'd act on. Just this persistent feeling that it would be easier to stop existing than to keep doing this." His stomach dropped. "Are you safe?" "Yes. I promise. I'm not going to hurt myself. It's just, sometimes the weight of continuing feels impossibly heavy." She looked at him. "Does that make sense?" "Unfortunately, yes." "Did you feel like that after your divorce?" "For a while. Not constantly, but some days the thought of getting out of bed and pretending to be functional felt insurmountable. Maya was the only reason I kept going." "What changed?" "Time. Therapy. Realizing that the exhaustion wasn't permanent, just persistent." He paused. "Have you thought about talking to someone? A professional?" Marcus's parents suggested it, very aggressively, like if I just saw a therapist everything would be fixed. "That's not how therapy works." "I know. But I also know I'm not ready yet. Right now I'm barely holding myself together. Adding another person, another place I have to be, feels like too much." Caleb nodded slowly. "Okay. But if that changes, if the thoughts get worse, I'll tell you, I promise." They were quiet for a while. The apartment building settled around them with its familiar nighttime sounds. "That moment on the kitchen floor," Lena said, "when I leaned on you, that was the first time I've touched another man since Marcus died. The first time I've let someone hold me. I'm sorry if it made you uncomfortable." "It didn't. That's what scares me." She pulled the blanket around her shoulders. "It felt safe. And I don't know if that's healthy or if I'm just replacing Marcus with the nearest available person." "What do you think?" "I think grief makes everything complicated. I think you've become important to me faster than makes sense. I think I'm terrified of what that means." "It doesn't have to mean anything you're not ready for it to mean." "But what if the world thinks differently? What if people see me spending all my time here and make assumptions?" "Let them. Their assumptions don't define reality." Lena looked at him for a long moment. "You're not worried about what people think?" "I stopped worrying about that when Jennifer left and everyone had opinions about our divorce. What matters is Maya's well-being and your well-being and whether what we're doing is harmful to either." "And is it? Harmful?" "I don't think so, but if you do, but..." "I don't. Not yet. I just worry that I will eventually. That I'm building a dependence that will hurt both of us when it breaks. Then we'll deal with that if it happens." She smiled faintly. "Such simple answers to complicated questions." "I find complicated questions usually have simple answers. We just don't like them." "What's the simple answer here?" "You need support. I can provide it. Everything else is details." Lena shook her head, but she was still smiling. "You make it sound so easy." "It is easy. We're making it complicated." "Maybe." She lay down on the pull-out bed, still fully clothed, and closed her eyes. Caleb stood to leave, assuming she wanted privacy to change and sleep. "Caleb?" He turned back. "Yeah?" "Thank you for catching me tonight, for not letting me drown in that guilt." "You would have surfaced eventually." "Maybe, but it would have taken longer without you." He nodded, uncomfortable with the weight of her gratitude. "Get some sleep." "Will you stay? Just for a few minutes?" He hesitated, aware of how this might look, how it might feel, then sat back down in the armchair. "Just until you fall asleep," he said. "Deal." She watched him from the bed, eyes already heavy with exhaustion. "Do you ever regret letting me in that first night? Taking on someone else's grief when you had your own life to manage?" "No." "Not even a little?" "Lena, you knocked on my door asking not to be alone. How could I possibly regret helping with that?" "Lots of people would have." "Then they're not people I want to be." She was quiet, her eyes drifting closed. "Marcus would have liked you," she murmured, voice already thick with sleep. "He always said the world needed more people who showed up." Within minutes, her breathing had evened out, deepened. Caleb sat in the armchair watching her sleep, this widow who'd crashed into his carefully controlled life and changed everything. He thought about what she'd said, about replacing Marcus, about inappropriate speed of connection, about the world's assumptions. She wasn't wrong to worry. What they were doing existed in some undefined space between friendship and something more intimate. Not romantic, not yet, maybe not ever, but profound in a way that made simple categories insufficient. Caleb stood quietly and walked to his own bedroom. Lay down in the darkness and listened to the building's familiar sounds. Thought about broken plates and broken hearts, and how sometimes healing looked nothing like you expected. The next morning, Lena was already awake when he emerged from his room. She'd made coffee, strong, the way he liked it, and was sitting at the kitchen table fully dressed. "I'm going back to my apartment today," she said without preamble, "just to try. Marcus's parents are coming this weekend to pack up some of his things, and I should probably be there." Caleb poured himself coffee. "How do you feel about that?" "Terrified, but I can't live on your couch forever." "You can live here as long as you need to." "I know, but need and want are getting confused, and I think I need space to figure out which is which." He sat across from her. "Okay, do you want company when you go back?" "No, this is something I have to do alone." She wrapped her hands around her mug. "But can I come back if it's too much?" "Always." She smiled, sad but genuine. "You've made this bearable, these past weeks. I don't think I would have survived them without you. You're stronger than you think. Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to find out." She left after breakfast, carrying the small bag of belongings she'd accumulated, stood in his doorway for a moment like she was memorizing the space. "I'll see you soon," she said. "I'll be here." She left, and the apartment felt instantly different, quieter, emptier in a way that had nothing to do with physical space. Maya noticed immediately. "Where's Mrs. Carter?" "She went home. She needed to spend some time in her own apartment." "Is she coming back?" "I don't know, sweetheart." Maya considered this seriously. "I hope she does. I like her." "Me too." But Lena didn't come back that night, or the next. Her apartment stayed silent through the wall, no sounds of movement or life. Caleb found himself listening for her, waiting for a knock that didn't come. On the third night, past midnight, he heard it. Not a knock, but the sound of a door opening in the hallway, then closing. Footsteps outside his apartment. A long pause. Then finally, the knock. He opened the door immediately. Lena stood there soaked through, hair plastered to her head, clothes dripping water onto the hallway floor. It was raining outside. He hadn't noticed, lost in his own thoughts. "I tried," she said, voice shaking. "I really tried. I stayed in there for 3 days, and I sorted through his clothes, and I talked to his parents on the phone, and I even slept in our bed. But tonight I woke up, and he wasn't there, and I just couldn't come inside." She stepped over the threshold, dripping and trembling. "I don't want to forget him. I don't want to move on or get over it or any of those things people keep telling me I'll eventually do, but I also don't want to disappear into this grief. I don't want to become someone who only exists in the past." "You won't." "How do you know?" "Because you're here. Because you're choosing to survive even when it would be easier not to." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I'm so cold." Caleb found her dry clothes, a t-shirt and sweatpants she'd left behind, and gave her privacy to change in the bathroom. When she emerged, he'd made tea and set it on the coffee table. They sat together on the couch, not the pull-out bed this time, but the actual couch, side by side in the dark apartment. "I'm not replacing Marcus with you," Lena said quietly, "but I am needing you in ways that scare me. And I don't know what to do about that." "What do you want to do?" "I want to stop feeling guilty for being alive, for having moments where I laugh or feel okay or enjoy something, for finding comfort here when I should probably be suffering alone in my apartment like a proper widow. There's no proper way to be a widow. Tell that to Marcus's mother. Tell that to everyone who keeps watching me like I'm a tragedy they need to fix or a scandal they need to judge." "Who's judging?" "Mrs. Patterson from 3B asked how I was doing, then mentioned she'd noticed I'm never home anymore. The implication was clear." Caleb felt anger spark in his chest. What you do with your grief is no one's business but yours. But she's right, isn't she? I'm practically living here. People are going to talk. Let them talk. Easy for you to say. You're not the widow who moved on suspiciously fast. You haven't moved on. You're surviving. There's a difference. Lena leaned her head against his shoulder, exhausted and defeated. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I just know I can't breathe in that apartment, and I can breathe here. Caleb put his arm around her shoulders, careful and deliberate. Then stay. As long as you need. We'll deal with everything else as it comes. She turned her face into his shoulder and started crying again, but it was different from the kitchen floor breakdown. Quieter. Almost peaceful. Like she'd finally given herself permission to stop fighting. And Caleb held her in the darkness of his living room while rain continued outside and the world slept, unaware and uncaring of two people trying to survive their separate devastations together. Neither knew that this was the beginning of something that would demand more from them than either was prepared to give. Neither understood yet that grief and comfort and desperate human need would eventually collide into something that looked like healing but felt like betrayal. They only knew this moment, this fragile sanctuary they'd built against the world's expectations and their own doubts. For now, in the darkness, it was enough. The whispers started 3 weeks later, quiet at first. Like wind through leaves you're not quite sure you're hearing. Mrs. Patterson wasn't subtle. She never had been. Caleb encountered her in the building's mail room on a Saturday morning while collecting bills and grocery store flyers. She was sorting through envelopes with the methodical attention of someone who had nothing better to do and all day to do it. "Good morning, Caleb," she said, her voice sticky sweet in the way that preceded judgment. "How are you? And little Maya?" "We're fine, thank you." "I'm so glad." She paused, examined an envelope like it contained state secrets. "And your friend, Mrs. Carter? I haven't seen her much lately. I hope she's managing all right." The phrasing was careful, calculated. Your friend, not your neighbor. The implication hung heavy in the small room. "She's doing as well as can be expected," Caleb said, keeping his voice neutral. Of course, such a tragedy. Losing a husband so young." Mrs. Patterson shook her head with theatrical sympathy. "Though I suppose she's fortunate to have such a supportive neighbor, someone to help her through this difficult time." Caleb recognized the fishing expedition for what it was. We're all just trying to help where we can. Certainly. Though I do wonder if perhaps too much help might be, well, it might give people the wrong impression, don't you think? A widow and a divorced man spending so much time together. People do talk. There it was, the judgment wrapped in concern, the gossip disguised as advice. "Let them talk," Caleb said, echoing his own words to Lena. "Grief doesn't follow a schedule or care about appearances." Mrs. Patterson's smile tightened. "I'm sure you're right. I'm only thinking of Mrs. Carter's reputation. And yours, of course. And Maya, children are so impressionable." Caleb felt anger flash hot and immediate in his chest. Maya is fine, and Lena's reputation can survive people's speculation. He left before Mrs. Patterson could continue, his hands shaking slightly as he climbed the stairs. The encounter stayed with him all morning, sour and uncomfortable. When he mentioned it to Lena that evening, she'd spent the day at her apartment again, another attempt at reclaiming space, her face went pale. "I knew this would happen," she said, sinking onto the couch. "I knew people would start assuming things." "Does it matter what they assume?" "Yes. No, I don't know." She pressed her hands against her face. "Marcus has been dead for 2 months. 2 months! And I'm spending every night at another man's apartment. How does that look?" "It looks like someone who's grieving and found support." "It looks like I've moved on, like I didn't love my husband enough to even pretend to mourn properly." "That's not true and you know it." "But it's what people will think." She dropped her hands, looked at him with frustration. "We need rules, Caleb. Boundaries. Something to make this less complicated." He sat in the armchair across from her, that familiar distance they'd maintained for weeks. "What kind of rules?" "I don't know. Limits on how much time I spend here, specific days instead of every night. Something that makes it clear this isn't, that we're not." "What? What aren't we?" She faltered. Romantic. We're not romantic. I know that. Do you? Because sometimes I'm not sure I know it. Sometimes the line feels very blurry. Caleb was quiet for a moment. She wasn't wrong. What they'd built existed in undefined territory. Too intimate for simple friendship, too necessary for casual acquaintance, too complicated for easy categorization. What do you want the rules to be? He asked finally. Lena stood, paced to the window, stared out at the city lights. Rule 1. Absolute honesty. If either of us starts feeling something we shouldn't, we tell each other immediately. Agreed. Rule 2. We don't replace Marcus. This isn't about me finding a new husband or you finding a new wife. This is about survival, not romance. Okay? Rule 3. Maya comes first, always. If this arrangement starts affecting her negatively, we stop immediately. That one's non-negotiable anyway. She turned to face him. Rule 4. We maintain appropriate physical boundaries. No blurring lines, no confusion about what this is. Caleb felt something twist in his chest but nodded. If that's what you need. I think it is. I think without rules this becomes something neither of us can control. And I can't handle anything else spiraling right now. Then we'll follow the rules. Lena walked back to the couch, sat down heavily. Do you think this is crazy? Setting rules for a friendship like we're negotiating a business contract? I think we're trying to protect ourselves and each other. That's not crazy. It feels crazy. Most necessary things do. She smiled faintly. There you go again, making complicated things sound simple. It's a gift. They sat in silence for a while. The rules hung between them, invisible but present, changing the texture of the space they occupied together. I should probably stay at my apartment tonight, Lena said eventually. Start implementing these boundaries. Caleb felt disappointment flicker through him, but pushed it down. If that's what you want. It's what I should do. Those aren't the same thing. She looked at him, something vulnerable in her expression. No, they're not. But she stayed anyway. One more night became one more week. The rules existed, but their implementation remained theoretical, something they'd agreed to in principle, but couldn't quite execute in practice. Maya noticed the tension, the way children always notice when adults are navigating invisible complexity. Are you and Mrs. Carter fighting? She asked one evening after Lena had left to spend a rare night in her own apartment. No, sweetheart. Why do you ask? You both seem sad. Different sad than before. Caleb marveled, not for the first time, at his daughter's emotional intelligence. We're not fighting. We're just trying to figure some things out. What things? Adult things. That's what you always say when you don't want to explain. Because sometimes adult things are complicated and hard to put into kid words. Maya considered this with the seriousness she applied to mathematical equations. Do you like Mrs. Carter? Of course I like her. No, I mean, do you like her? Like how Prince Charming likes Cinderella? Caleb's heart stuttered. Maya, because Sophia says when grown-ups spend lots of time together, it means they like each other. And you and Mrs. Carter spend all the time together. Sophia doesn't know everything. She knows lots of things. Her mom dates people. Caleb rubbed his face, trying to find the right words. Mrs. Carter's husband just died. She's very sad, and I'm helping her not be alone with that sadness. That's different from liking someone the way you're talking about. But what if you did like her that way? Would that be bad? It's not about bad or good. It's about timing and what's appropriate. And Maya, why are we having this conversation? She shrugged, picking at her bedspread. I just want to make sure that if you did like her, it would be okay. Because she's nice and she makes you smile more, and I think she likes being here with us. Come here, kiddo. Maya climbed into his lap, even though she was getting too big for it, curling against him like she was 5 again instead of 8. I'm not going to do anything that would hurt you or confuse you or make our life more complicated, Caleb said into her hair. You're my first priority, always. I know, but you're allowed to like people too. Where's all this coming from? I heard Mrs. Patterson talking to Mrs. Chen in the hallway about you and Mrs. Carter. They said it looked suspicious. Anger flared again, hotter this time. What they think doesn't matter. But what if they're right? What if it is suspicious? Maya, look at me. He waited until she did. There's nothing wrong with helping someone who's grieving. There's nothing suspicious about kindness. Mrs. Patterson is bored and likes to gossip, but that doesn't make her opinions true or important. Okay, but she still looked uncertain. Do you like having Mrs. Carter around? Yeah. She's nice, and the apartment feels less quiet. Then that's what matters, not what the neighbors think. Maya nodded against his chest. Can I ask one more question? Always. If Mrs. Carter got better and didn't need to come here anymore, would you miss her? The question hit harder than Caleb expected. Yes, I would. Me too. Later, after Maya was asleep, Caleb sat in the dark living room and thought about his daughter's questions, about Mrs. Patterson's implications, about rules they'd established but couldn't seem to follow, about the fact that he would miss Lena if she stopped coming, that her presence had become necessary in ways he hadn't intended or expected, that maybe the rules existed precisely because they were both terrified of what might happen without them. His phone buzzed, a text from Lena. Can't sleep. Apartment too quiet. Can I come over? He should say no, should enforce the boundaries they'd agreed on, should start creating distance before this became something neither could untangle from. Yes, doors unlocked. She arrived 15 minutes later, hair pulled back messily, wearing sweatpants and one of Marcus's old college sweatshirts. Her eyes were red from crying. I'm sorry, she said immediately. I know we said we'd try to maintain space, but I just... Come in. She did, and they returned to their familiar positions. Lena on the couch, Caleb in the armchair, careful distance maintained between them. His birthday is next week, Lena said. He would have been 35. His parents want me to come to Florida, visit the cemetery together, have dinner as a family. But I can't. The thought of being trapped there for a weekend, performing grief for his family, then don't go. But they're expecting me. And they're his parents. They loved him too. And you loved him more. You get to decide how to honor his birthday. She pulled her knees up, wrapped her arms around them. I thought about just staying in bed that day, turning off my phone, closing the curtains, pretending the day doesn't exist. Is that what you want to do? No, this is going to sound terrible. Tell me anyway. I want to celebrate him, not mourn him. I want to do things he loved. Eat his favorite foods, listen to his music, remember the good parts instead of just sitting in darkness thinking about how he's gone. That doesn't sound terrible. That sounds healthy. His mother wouldn't see it that way. She'd think I was being disrespectful, celebrating when I should be grieving. You can do both. Lena rested her chin on her knees. Will you help me? With the celebrating? I don't think I can do it alone. Every alarm in Caleb's head suggested this was a bad idea, that getting more entangled in Lena's grief, in her memories of Marcus, would only make the eventual separation harder. But looking at her face, at the hope mixed with fear in her expression, he couldn't refuse. Of course I'll help. Thank you. She was quiet for a moment. We're terrible at following our own rules, aren't we? Spectacularly bad. Should we try harder? Should I force myself to stay away? Do you want to? No. I want to keep coming here and pretending the world doesn't exist outside this apartment. I want to keep having dinner with you and Maya and washing dishes and talking about nothing and everything. I want to keep feeling like I might survive this. Then keep doing it. But the whispers, let them whisper. Lena, you're allowed to survive however you need to survive. If that means spending time here, then spend time here. If it means breaking our rules, then we'll break them. What about Maya? What about setting a good example? We are setting a good example. We're showing her that kindness matters more than appearances, that helping people in pain is more important than what the neighbors think. She smiled, sad and grateful. You always know what to say. I'm making it up as I go. Well, you're good at improvisation. They lapsed into comfortable silence. Outside, the city continued its endless motion, indifferent to individual struggles and small rebellions against social expectations. Tell me about Marcus, Caleb said suddenly. His favorite things. What made him happy? Lena looked surprised. You want to hear about my dead husband? I want to help you celebrate him. That means knowing who he was. She uncurled slightly, something softening in her expression. He loved terrible action movies, the kind with ridiculous explosions and impossible stunts. He'd watch them over and over, quoting the dialogue. What else? Pancakes. Specifically blueberry pancakes with way too much syrup. And Motown music. He knew every word to every Temptations song. He'd sing them while working on cars, completely off-key but with total confidence. Caleb smiled. He sounds like he was fun. He was. Everyone loved being around Marcus. He made everything feel lighter. Her voice caught. I miss that most. The way he could walk into a room and suddenly everything felt more possible. What was his favorite food? Barbecue. Real slow-cooked pulled pork with vinegar-based sauce. We used to drive 2 hours to this tiny place in the country because they made it the way his grandfather had taught him to make it. Then that's what we'll eat on his birthday. Barbecue and blueberry pancakes, and we'll play Temptations music. Lena's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. That's perfect. He would have loved that. Good. Caleb? Yeah? Thank you for not being afraid of him, of his memory. Most people tiptoe around mentioning Marcus like saying his name will break me. Will it? Sometimes, but I'd rather break and have people remember he existed than have everyone pretend he didn't. They talked for another hour, Lena sharing stories about Marcus. Their first date, their wedding, the time he accidentally dyed all their laundry pink and spent a week wearing pink undershirts under his work uniform. Small memories, precious and painful and necessary. When she finally fell asleep on the couch, Caleb covered her with a blanket and retreated to his room. But sleep wouldn't come. He lay awake thinking about rules that didn't work and boundaries that kept shifting and the dangerous territory they were navigating. Thinking about Maya's question. Do you like her? And the answer he hadn't given because he didn't want to examine it too closely. Marcus's birthday arrived on a Tuesday. Caleb took a personal day from work, kept Maya home from school with permission from her teacher. They spent the morning preparing, making blueberry pancakes for breakfast, shopping for barbecue ingredients, creating a playlist of Temptations songs. Lena showed up at 10 wearing jeans and one of Marcus's button-down shirts, eyes already red but face determined. I almost didn't come, she admitted. Almost stayed in bed like I originally planned. I'm glad you didn't. Maya hugged her immediately. We're going to celebrate Mr. Carter. Dad explained everything. Lena crouched down to Maya's level. Is that okay with you? It might seem strange having a party for someone who's not here. It's not strange. It's nice. Everyone should be remembered on their birthday. The simple wisdom of children. Lena hugged Maya tighter, then stood and looked at Caleb. Okay, I'm ready. They cooked together, filling the apartment with smells of slow-roasting pork and cornbread. The Temptations sang about my girl and Ain't Too Proud to Beg, while Maya danced around the kitchen with unself-conscious joy. Lena told stories while she worked. About Marcus's terrible singing, his habit of stealing her fries even though he always ordered his own, the way he'd leave sticky notes with terrible puns on the bathroom mirror. He proposed with a sticky note, she said, smiling at the memory. I woke up one morning and there was a note on my forehead that said, "Marry me," with a question mark. No ring, no fancy dinner, just Marcus being Marcus. What did you say? Maya asked. I wrote yes on another sticky note and put it on his forehead while he was sleeping. We were engaged for 6 months before we actually bought a ring. That's romantic, Maya declared. It was very us. They ate dinner at 5, the three of them crowded around the small table. The pulled pork was perfect, the cornbread sweet and crumbly. They raised glasses of sweet tea, Marcus's favorite drink, in a toast. To Marcus, Caleb said. To Marcus, Lena echoed, voice steady. Who deserved more birthdays than he got? Maya clinked her glass against theirs solemnly. After dinner, while Maya was in her room reading, Lena stood at the window watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled. Thank you for today, she said without turning around. It helped, remembering the good parts instead of just sitting in the pain. You're welcome. His mother called this morning, asked why I wasn't in Florida. I told her I was celebrating his birthday my own way and she hung up on me. I'm sorry. I'm not. Not really. I'm tired of performing grief the way other people think I should. She turned to face him. Is that wrong? Should I care more about what his family needs? You are allowed to grieve however you need to grieve. Their approval isn't required. Even if it means choosing to spend his birthday with you instead of his family? Especially then. She walked over to where he sat, stood in front of him with something unreadable in her expression. I need to tell you something. Because of Rule 1, absolute honesty. Caleb's heart rate picked up. Okay. I'm starting to depend on you in ways that scare me, not just for practical support or someone to talk to. Emotionally, I look forward to coming here. I feel better when you're in the room, and I'm terrified that I'm replacing Marcus with you without meaning to. Are you? I don't know. How do I tell the difference between needing someone because they help me survive and needing someone because I have feelings for them? What do you think the answer is? She was quiet for a long moment. I think it's both. I think I need you to survive, and I'm also developing feelings I shouldn't have. And I don't know what to do about that. Caleb stood, faced her directly. The space between them felt charged, dangerous. Do you want to stop coming here? No. Do you want me to create more distance? No. She looked at him, vulnerable and honest. I want you to tell me that what I'm feeling is just grief making me confused, that I'm not actually falling for you. I'm just desperate for connection. Is that what you want to hear? It's what would be easier. I'm not going to lie to make this easier. Then tell me the truth. What do you feel? He'd been avoiding this question for weeks, pushing it down every time it surfaced, but she'd been brave enough to ask, and she deserved an honest answer. I look forward to you coming here too, he said carefully. I find myself listening for your knock, thinking about things I want to tell you when you arrive. And yes, that scares me too, because you're grieving and vulnerable, and the last thing you need is me taking advantage of that vulnerability. You're not taking advantage. How do you know? How do either of us know what's real and what's just grief and proximity and desperate human need? Lena reached out, took his hand. The touch was electric, familiar, and new all at once. Maybe we don't know. Maybe we can't know yet. So what do? We stick to the rules. We maintain boundaries. We give this time to see if these feelings are real or just circumstantial. And if they're real, then we deal with that when the time comes, when I'm not so broken that I can't tell the difference between love and desperation. You're not broken. I feel broken. He squeezed her hand gently. Broken things can still be beautiful. She smiled, sad and warm. There you go again, saying exactly what I need to hear. They stood there holding hands while Maya's music played softly from her room and the city hummed outside. The moment felt suspended, precious, like something that would shatter if either of them moved too quickly. Then Lena stepped back, releasing his hand. I should go, back to my apartment, start trying to actually implement these boundaries we keep talking about. Okay. Will you be disappointed if I don't come back for a few days? I'll miss you, but I want you to do what's right for you. She nodded, grabbed her jacket, stood at the door for a moment like she was memorizing the space. Happy birthday, Marcus, she whispered to the air. I hope wherever you are, you know you were loved. Then she left, and Caleb stood in his suddenly too quiet apartment, wondering if they were protecting themselves or just postponing the inevitable. Lena stayed away for 4 days. 4 days of silence from 4B, of the apartment feeling emptier than it had before she'd started coming. Maya asked about her once, then seemed to understand without being told that sometimes people needed space. On the 5th night at 11:47 p.m., there was a knock. Caleb had been lying in bed awake, not admitting to himself that he was waiting for that exact sound. He opened the door and Lena stood there, not crying this time, just looking at him with clear eyes. I tried, she said. I really tried to stay away, to give us both space, to figure out my feelings without your presence, confusing everything. And all I figured out is that I don't want to be anywhere but here, that my apartment feels like a tomb and your apartment feels like home, that whatever I'm feeling might be complicated and poorly timed and potentially disastrous, but it's real. Caleb stepped aside. Come in. She did, and everything that had been held in careful suspension for weeks finally, inevitably, began to shift. They stood in the doorway for a long moment, neither moving, both understanding that crossing this threshold meant something different tonight than all the other nights before. Lena stepped inside and Caleb closed the door behind her with a soft click that sounded louder than it should have in the quiet apartment. Maya was asleep down the hall, her door closed, her breathing steady and peaceful in the way only children could manage. I spent 4 days trying to convince myself this was just grief, Lena said, her voice low. That I was confusing gratitude with feelings, desperation with attraction. That if I just stayed away long enough, it would fade. Did it? No. It got stronger. She turned to face him fully. And that terrifies me because Marcus has been dead for less than 3 months, and I shouldn't be feeling this way about anyone, especially not you. Why especially not me? Because you've been too good, too patient, too perfect. And I'm scared that I'm creating some fantasy where you're the hero who saved me from drowning when really you're just a kind man who took pity on a broken neighbor. Caleb moved to the living room, needed distance to think clearly. Lena followed, and they assumed their familiar positions, her on the couch, him in the armchair, that careful space between them that had become both protection and torture. I don't pity you, Caleb said carefully. I never have. Then what do you feel? He'd avoided answering this directly before, dancing around the truth with careful words and deliberate omissions. But she'd been brave enough to knock on his door at midnight and lay herself bare. She deserved honesty. I feel like my life was in black and white until you knocked on my door, he said. Like I'd convinced myself that being a good father to Maya was enough, that I didn't need anything else. And then you showed up and suddenly everything was in color again, and I didn't know what to do with that. Lena's breath caught. Caleb, but I also know that you're vulnerable and grieving and the absolute worst possible candidate for anything resembling a relationship. That whatever you're feeling might evaporate the moment you're not drowning anymore. That I could be a lifeboat you abandon the second you reach shore. Is that what you think I'm doing? I don't know. How could either of us know? She stood up, started pacing. After Marcus died, I thought I'd never feel anything again except pain. That my heart had died with him and all that was left was this hollow space where emotions used to be. But then I started coming here and slowly, so slowly I didn't notice at first, I started feeling things again. Safety, comfort, gratitude. She stopped, looked at him. And then something more. Something that felt like betrayal every time I acknowledged it. Lena, I'm not finished. Her voice was shaking but determined. I spent 4 days in my apartment asking myself if I actually have feelings for you or if I'm just desperate for human connection. And the answer is yes, both. I am desperate for connection and I do have feelings for you. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. Caleb stood, needing to be on equal footing with her. So what do we do about it? I don't know, because there's no right answer here. If we act on this, people will say I didn't love Marcus enough. If we don't act on it, we're lying to ourselves and each other. And either way, I'm terrified of hurting you or Maya or Marcus's memory or everyone all at once. What do you want? Forget what people will say or what's appropriate or what the rules dictate. What do you actually want? She looked at him with eyes that held too many emotions to name. I want to stop feeling guilty for being alive. I want to honor Marcus's memory without being imprisoned by it. I want to see if these feelings are real without rushing into something neither of us is ready for. That's a lot of wants. I know, probably too many. They stood facing each other across the small living room, the space between them charged with everything unsaid over the past months. Caleb could see the war happening behind her eyes, grief and guilt and desire and fear, all battling for dominance. Can I tell you what I want? He asked. Please. I want to kiss you. I've wanted to kiss you for weeks now, and I hate myself for it because your husband just died and you're vulnerable and I should be better than this. Lena's eyes widened. Caleb, but I also want you to heal properly. I want you to grieve Marcus without feeling like you're betraying him by moving forward. I want Maya to be protected from any fallout. I want to do this right, whatever right means in a situation this complicated. What if there is no right way? Then we figure out the least wrong way. She laughed, a broken sound that might have been a sob. You and your simple answers to impossible questions. It's my superpower. They were closer now, without either remembering moving. Close enough that Caleb could see the gold flecks in her brown eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly at her sides, the rapid rise and fall of her breathing. "If you kiss me right now," Lena said quietly, "I won't stop you, but I also won't be able to promise it means anything beyond this moment, beyond grief and loneliness and desperate human need. I know, and I can't promise I won't wake up tomorrow and regret it, or feel like I betrayed Marcus, or panic and push you away. I know that too. Then why would you still want to? Because some things are worth the risk." Lena closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, they were full of tears. "I loved my husband. I need you to know that. Whatever happens next, whatever this becomes, I loved Marcus with everything I had." "I know you did, and I'm not trying to replace him with you. I know. But I also can't keep pretending I don't feel something when I'm near you. Can't keep lying about wanting to lean on you in ways that have nothing to do with grief." Caleb reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, cupped her face in his hands with a gentleness that made her breath hitch. Her skin was warm, tear-dampened, impossibly soft. "We don't have to do anything tonight," he said. "We can just sit with this honesty and figure out what comes next in the morning." "I don't want to wait until morning. Lena, I've been waiting, thinking, trying to be responsible and appropriate and all the things a proper widow should be, and I'm so tired of it." She leaned into his touch. "I don't want to make any big decisions or promises. I just want one moment where I stop thinking and just feel." "You're sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." He leaned in slowly, still giving her space to change her mind, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she rose slightly on her toes, closing the final distance between them. The kiss was soft, tentative. Nothing like the passionate embraces in movies. It was careful and questioning and laced with uncertainty. Lena's lips were salt-sweet from tears, trembling against his. Her hands came up to grip his shirt like she needed the anchor. It lasted maybe 5 seconds before she pulled back, eyes wide. "I can't," she started, then stopped. I need to." She stepped back, wrapped her arms around herself. Caleb let her go, his heart pounding, waiting for whatever came next. "I'm sorry," Lena said. "I thought I could do this, but I can't. It feels too much like cheating, even though that's insane, because Marcus is dead and you can't cheat on someone who's dead, but it still feels—" "Hey," Caleb kept his voice gentle. "It's okay. We don't have to do anything you're not ready for." "But I wanted to be ready. I wanted that kiss to feel like moving forward instead of moving away from Marcus. Maybe it can be both." She looked at him, confused. "How? Maybe honoring Marcus's memory doesn't mean staying frozen in grief forever. Maybe it means allowing yourself to live the kind of full life he would have wanted for you. You didn't know him. How can you know what he would have wanted? Because you've told me about him, and every story you've shared paints a picture of a man who loved you enough to want you happy, even without him." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "That's not fair. Using Marcus's own kindness against my guilt. I'm not trying to manipulate you. I'm trying to give you permission to feel whatever you feel without the weight of imagined judgment." Lena sank onto the couch, and Caleb sat beside her this time, not in the armchair but close, their knees almost touching. "I keep imagining what people would say if they knew," she said. "Marcus's parents, my family, the neighbors, everyone who thinks grief should look a certain way and last a certain amount of time. What about what you think?" "I think I'm a mess. I think I don't know the difference between gratitude and affection anymore. I think I'm terrified of hurting you by using you as a crutch, and equally terrified of pushing you away and being alone again. Those are normal things to think. They don't feel normal. They feel impossible." Caleb took her hand, laced their fingers together. The gesture felt more intimate somehow than the kiss had. "What if we stop trying to define this? Stop putting pressure on what it has to be or can't be." "What do you mean?" "I mean we acknowledge that we care about each other, that we're both scared and confused and navigating complicated feelings, and we give ourselves permission to figure it out slowly instead of forcing decisions right now." Lena squeezed his hand. "No promises? No defining what this is?" "Not until you're ready, however long that takes. That could be months, years even." "Then it takes years." She turned to look at him fully. Why are you willing to wait? You could find someone uncomplicated, someone who doesn't come with a dead husband's worth of baggage. Because complicated is worth it if it's you. The words hung between them, simple and profound. Lena started crying again, but this time she leaned into him instead of pulling away. Let him wrap his arms around her while she shook with the weight of everything she was feeling. So scared, she whispered against his chest. Of what? Of everything. Of dishonoring Marcus, of hurting Maya, of falling for you and having it be a mistake, of not falling for you and missing something real, of people judging me, of judging myself. That's a lot of fear. I know. What if we just focused on today? Not on what people might think or what might happen months from now, just what feels right in this moment. She pulled back to look at him. And what feels right? This, sitting here with you, being honest, not rushing. That feels right to you? Yeah, it does. She nodded slowly. It feels right to me too. Scary, but right. They sat together on the couch, no longer maintaining careful distance, just existing in shared space. Lena rested her head on his shoulder, and Caleb let himself hold her, really hold her, without pretending it was purely platonic comfort. Can I stay tonight? She asked quietly. You always can. I mean here, not on the pull-out bed. Here with you. Caleb's heart rate kicked up. Lena, not for anything more than sleeping, she clarified quickly. I just don't want to be alone. Don't want to go back to that pull-out bed where I spend every night staring at the ceiling trying to figure out what I'm doing. Maya might wake up, might ask questions. I know, but I trust you to handle that, to explain in whatever way makes sense for her. He considered this carefully, the implications, the risks, the potential complications, then decided that overthinking had gotten them nowhere. Okay. Really? Really? They went through the nighttime routine quietly. Lena changed in the bathroom while Caleb checked on Maya, still sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the adults navigating impossible choices down the hall. When he returned to his bedroom, Lena was already under the covers, looking impossibly small and vulnerable in his bed. He changed into sleep clothes and slid in beside her, keeping space between them. For a long moment, they just lay there in the darkness, both acutely aware of the other's presence. Caleb? Yeah? Thank you for not giving up on me, for letting me be a mess without judgment. You're not a mess. I absolutely am, but thank you for pretending otherwise. He reached out in the darkness, found her hand, held it. Whatever we're doing it together. You're not alone in this mess. She squeezed back. That might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. They fell asleep like that, hands linked in the darkness, two people who'd survived separate devastations finding unexpected peace in shared space. Morning came too early. Caleb woke to find Lena already awake, watching him with an expression he couldn't read. Hi, she said softly. Hi. I didn't regret it. Waking up here. I thought I might, but I don't. I'm glad. Maya's going to have questions. I know. What are you going to tell her? The truth, that you're someone important to both of us, that grown-up relationships are complicated, that we're figuring things out. You make it sound simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. There were sounds from down the hall, Maya's door opening, small footsteps heading to the bathroom. Lena sat up quickly, uncertain. Should I leave before she sees? No, we're not hiding this. But, Lena, we're not doing anything wrong. We don't need to hide. Maya appeared in the doorway moments later, still in pajamas, hair sticking up at odd angles. She looked at Lena in Caleb's bed, then at Caleb, processing. Is Mrs. Carter staying for breakfast? She asked, voice sleep rough, but matter of fact. Yes, Caleb said. Is that okay with you? Maya considered this with her usual seriousness. Does this mean she's your girlfriend now, like how Sophia's mom has a boyfriend? Lena's face went pale, but Caleb kept his voice steady. It means Mrs. Carter is someone very important to me. We're still figuring out exactly what that means. Okay. Maya accepted this with the ease of children who hadn't yet learned to make things complicated. Can we have pancakes? Sure, sweetheart. Maya disappeared back down the hall. Lena let out a breath she'd been holding. That was easier than expected, she said. Kids usually are. It's adults who complicate things. They made pancakes together, the three of them in the kitchen, working around each other with practiced ease. It felt domestic and normal and terrifying in how right it felt. After breakfast, after Maya had gone to get dressed for school, Lena turned to Caleb at the sink. I need to tell Marcus's parents, she said, about us, whatever we are, before they hear it from someone else. Are you ready for that conversation? No, but it needs to happen. Do you want me there? No, this is something I need to do alone. She paused. But can I come back after? However it goes? Always. She left to shower and change in her own apartment, and Caleb got Maya ready for school, dropped her off with the usual kiss and reminder to have a good day. When he returned home, Lena was sitting on his doorstep. I couldn't do it from my apartment, she explained. Too many memories. Called them from the hallway instead. How did it go? About as badly as expected. His mother cried. His father said I was dishonoring Marcus's memory. They both said it was too soon, that I needed to respect the grieving process, that I was making a terrible mistake. I'm sorry. I told them I loved Marcus, that I always would, but that I was still alive and needed to figure out how to keep living. She looked up at him. His mother hung up on me. Again. Caleb sat down beside her on the doorstep. They'll come around eventually, or they won't. But either way, you're allowed to make your own choices. I don't feel allowed. I feel selfish and guilty and like I'm betraying everyone. You're not betraying anyone by surviving, aren't I? Marcus has been dead for 11 weeks and I'm already, moving on? Replacing him? No, you're learning to carry him with you while still moving forward. That's different. She leaned against him. I wish I had your certainty. I'm not certain about anything except that watching you drown and doing nothing would destroy me. That's not a great foundation for a relationship. Good thing we're not defining this as a relationship yet. She laughed despite everything. You're impossible. I try. They sat on the doorstep for a long time, watching neighbors come and go, receiving curious glances and knowing whispers would follow. Caleb felt Lena tense beside him with each passing person. Let them look, he said quietly. Their opinions don't change anything. Don't they? Public opinion has power. Only if you give it power. Mrs. Patterson walked by, did a double take at seeing them sitting together, opened her mouth to say something, then seemed to think better of it, and continued on. Lena's hand found Caleb's, squeezed tight. This is going to be hard, she said, dealing with everyone's judgment. Probably. Are you sure you want to sign up for that? I'm already signed up. Have been since I opened my door that first night. She turned to look at him. I don't know how to do this. How to grieve Marcus and make space for you at the same time. How to honor what was while building what might be. Then we figure it out together. Make mistakes, learn as we go, give ourselves grace when we get it wrong. That sounds terrifying. Most worthwhile things do. They went inside eventually, and Lena curled up on the couch with a book she wasn't reading while Caleb worked on his laptop. The silence was comfortable, familiar, laced with possibility instead of just grief. Caleb? Yeah? I think I want to try, whatever this is. Slowly, carefully, with lots of room for me to panic and pull back. But I want to try. He looked up from his laptop. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Okay? Then we try. Rules still apply, though. Honesty. Maya comes first. We take this slow. Agreed. And if I wake up tomorrow and regret everything, then we deal with it tomorrow. She smiled, real and warm. You're very patient with my neuroses. I find them charming. Liar. Okay, sometimes they're exhausting, but still worth it. That evening, when Maya came home from school, she accepted Lena's presence with the easy adaptability of children. They did homework together at the kitchen table, Lena helping with a particularly difficult reading comprehension worksheet. Mrs. Carter, Maya said, pencil paused over her paper. Can I ask you something? Of course. Are you going to live with us now? Lena glanced at Caleb, uncertain. He gave her a small nod, her call to make. I don't know yet, sweetheart, Lena said carefully. Would that bother you if I did? Maya thought about this seriously. I don't think so. I like when you're here. The apartment feels happier. What about your mom? Lena asked. Would she be upset? Mom has a new boyfriend. She probably won't care. Maya returned to her worksheet like this was settled. Caleb felt his chest tighten. Maya so rarely mentioned Jennifer anymore, had adapted to their new normal with resilience that sometimes broke his heart. Now she was accepting another major change with the same pragmatic grace. Later, after Maya was in bed, Lena stood at the window looking out at the city. She's amazing, she said. So emotionally intelligent for 8. She's had to grow up fast. Because of the divorce? Because I couldn't hide my pain from her. She learned to read emotions out of necessity. Lena turned to him. Do you think we're confusing her? Moving too fast? I think we're being honest with her. Kids can handle truth better than lies. What if this doesn't work? What if I wake up 6 months from now and realize this was just grief and I've hurt both of you for nothing? Then we'll handle it. But Lena, living in fear of possible future pain means never taking any risks, never trying anything. I'm not good at risk. You're taking one right now. She walked over to where he sat, stood in front of him. Can I try something? Always. She leaned down and kissed him, less tentative than before. This kiss held decision instead of question, commitment instead of confusion. When she pulled back, her eyes were clear. Okay, she said. I'm in. Terrified and uncertain and probably going to panic repeatedly, but I'm in. You're sure? No, but I'm choosing it anyway. He stood, cupped her face in his hands. We go slow. We check in constantly. We give you space when you need it. And if you want to stop at any point, I know you've made that very clear. She smiled. You're very big on consent and communication. I try to be a decent human. You succeed spectacularly. They stood close, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. The moment felt suspended, precious, like something that might shatter if they moved wrong. I need to say something, Lena said, before we go any further. Okay. I loved Marcus. I will always love Marcus. He was my first love, my husband, my partner, and part of my heart will always belong to him. I know. But I'm starting to realize that hearts don't have limited capacity, that loving him doesn't mean I can't develop feelings for someone else, that I can honor his memory and still build a future. That sounds healthy. It feels terrifying. Most growth does. She pulled back to look at him properly. Thank you for waiting, for being patient while I figured this out. Not many people would have. I think you're worth waiting for. Even with all my complications and grief and dead husband baggage? Especially with all of that, it's made you who you are. She kissed him again, and this time when they pulled apart, she was smiling. So what now? Now we live. We take it day by day. We make mistakes and learn from them. We build something new while honoring what was. You make it sound simple. The concept is simple. The execution will be messy. I can do messy? I know you can. They settled on the couch together, Lena tucked against his side in a way that felt both new and familiar. Outside, the city continued its indifferent motion, but inside this small apartment, 2 broken people were learning to be whole again. Caleb? Yeah? I think I'm going to be okay. Eventually. Not today, maybe not for a long time, but eventually. I think so too. And I think Marcus would approve. Of you. Of this. He always said I needed someone who would hold steady when I spiraled. I can do that. I know, you've been doing it for months. They sat in comfortable silence, and for the first time since Marcus died, Lena felt something other than grief. Not happiness, not yet, but possibility. Hope, the fragile beginning of healing. In the weeks that followed, they navigated their new reality with care. Lena spent more nights in Caleb's apartment than her own, though she maintained her separate space for times when she needed solitude. Maya adjusted with surprising ease, accepting Lena as part of their family unit without fanfare or confusion. The whispers continued. Mrs. Patterson and her cohort gossiped. Marcus's parents stopped calling. Lena's coworkers asked careful questions she deflected with practiced ease. But none of it mattered as much as she'd feared it would. What mattered was Maya's laughter when Lena helped her with art projects. What mattered was Caleb's steady presence through Lena's bad days when grief hit unexpectedly. What mattered was slowly learning that surviving didn't mean betraying, and moving forward didn't mean forgetting. 3 months after that midnight knock on Caleb's door, Lena stood in her apartment packing boxes. Not to move in with Caleb, they'd agreed that was still too fast, but to downsize, to let go of the space that had become a shrine instead of a home. Caleb helped her pack, and together they sorted through Marcus's things, kept some, donated others, created a memory box of items too precious to discard but too painful to display. "Thank you," Lena said, holding one of Marcus's old work shirts, "for not being threatened by him, for understanding that loving you doesn't erase loving him. He was your husband. He deserves to be remembered." "You're a good man, Caleb Reed." "I try." She folded the shirt carefully, placed it in the memory box. "I think I'm ready to really move forward, not to forget, but to build something new." "You're sure?" "As sure as I can be about anything, which isn't very, but it's enough." That night, back in Caleb's apartment with Maya asleep down the hall, Lena and Caleb sat together on the couch. "I want to tell you something," she said. "I'm listening. I love you." The words came out soft but certain. Not as a replacement for Marcus, not as gratitude for helping me survive, but as a real, genuine, terrifying feeling all its own. Caleb felt his heart expand. "Lena, you don't have to say it back. I know this is complicated and we're still figuring things out. I just needed you to know." "I love you too," he said, and the words felt right. True. Have for a while now. Was just waiting for you to be ready to hear it. She kissed him, and this time there was no hesitation, no guilt, just two people choosing each other despite the complicated journey that brought them together. When they finally pulled apart, Lena rested her forehead against his. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For knocking back when I knocked on your door. For not leaving me alone when I needed someone. For being patient while I figured out how to live again. You would have figured it out without me. Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to." They stayed there in the quiet apartment, wrapped in each other, and the knowledge that they'd survived the worst and come out stronger. Grief hadn't disappeared. Lena still had bad days when Marcus's absence hit fresh and sharp. But those days were interspersed with good ones now, with laughter and possibility and the slow building of something new. The rules they'd established evolved. Honesty remained paramount, but they learned to balance truth with grace. Maya's well-being stayed priority, but she thrived in their unconventional family structure. And the boundaries around physical intimacy relaxed as Lena grew more certain of her feelings, more comfortable with moving forward. 6 months after Marcus died, on what would have been his 36th birthday, Lena and Caleb and Maya celebrated him together. They made his favorite foods, played his music, told stories that made them laugh and cry. And when Maya asked if Mr. Didier Carter would be happy about Mrs. Carter being with them now, Lena answered honestly, "I think he would be, because he loved me enough to want me happy, even without him." "That's what love is," Maya said, with the wisdom of children who see things clearly. "Wanting people to be happy." That night, after Maya was asleep, Lena turned to Caleb in the darkness of his bedroom, their bedroom now, though she still maintained her own apartment for the rare times she needed space. "I don't know what the future holds," she said. "Don't know if we'll work long-term or if this is just what I needed to survive the worst time of my life." "Does that scare you?" "Not as much as it used to. I'm learning that uncertainty isn't the same as danger. That's growth. It's exhausting." He pulled her closer. "But worth it?" "Yeah, worth it." They fell asleep tangled together, two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their separate devastations and built something beautiful from the ruins. It wasn't the life either had planned. It wasn't simple or uncomplicated or free from pain. But it was real. It was honest. It was survival that had transformed into something more. And in the morning, when sunlight filtered through the windows and Maya's voice called them to breakfast, Lena woke without the immediate crush of grief that had defined her mornings for so long. Instead, she felt possibility, hope, the quiet knowledge that she was exactly where she needed to be. Marcus would always be part of her story, woven into her history and her heart. But he was no longer the whole story. She'd learned to carry him with her while still moving forward, to honor what was while building what could be. And as she walked into the kitchen where Caleb was making pancakes and Maya was setting the table, Lena realized she'd done something she'd thought impossible that night she knocked on Caleb's door. She'd survived. More than that, she'd learned to live again. The world outside still whispered. Mrs. Patterson still disapproved. Marcus's parents still maintained their distance. But none of it mattered as much as this moment, this small apartment filled with morning light and the smell of pancakes and the sound of a child's laughter. This was home. This was family. This was proof that grief didn't have to be the end of the story. Sometimes it was just the beginning of a new chapter. And as Caleb smiled at her across the kitchen and Maya asked if they could go to the park later, Lena felt something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of purpose. Not the erasure of the past, but the embrace of the present. She'd knocked on a stranger's door in her darkest moment, and he'd answered with kindness and patience and a love she hadn't known she needed. Now, standing in the morning light with her unconventional family, Lena understood that sometimes the worst nights lead to the most unexpected mornings. Sometimes survival looks like falling apart in someone's kitchen. Sometimes healing looks like breaking the rules. And sometimes love looks nothing like you expected, but everything like what you need. This was her story now. Not the one she'd planned, but the one she'd lived through and chosen and built from the ashes of what was. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.